Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Ajay Solkhe, presently working as Assistant Professor, University School of Management, Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra, Haryana. Module 1 has been organized into learning objectives, introduction, industrial relations, definition in related concepts, objectives of industrial relations, forms of industrial relations, factors influencing industrial relations, prerequisites for sound industrial relations, and lastly, it ends with the collaborative model for sound industrial relations. Upon completion of this module, a student should be able to understand the very meaning and related concepts of industrial relations, its major actors, the major objectives, obligations, roles and responsibilities of industrial relations, its actors, the various forms of industrial relations, factors influencing it, the requirement of a sound industrial relation system which leads to prosperity of an industrial enterprise. Very first of all, we need to be clear with what exactly the definition of industrial relation is. The relationship between the employer and the employee is usually referred to as industrial relations. The labor management relation is a highly sensitive and complex aspect influenced by a variety of factors. The term industrial relations, employee relations and labor management relations, they are used interchangeably by the organizations while dealing with employer-employee relationship in the organizations. The protection of the manual interest of the employees and the employers is the essence of the definition of industrial relations. One of the most comprehensive definitions which put industrial relations in a proper perspective of human relationship is given by J. Henry Richardson. He says industrial relations are the art of living together for purposes of production. The parties involved in industrial relations, that is the workers, the employers, have a common purpose, that is production. He added further that the regulation of a relationship is from within, for the parties have to learn to live together by a process of accommodation and adjustment. H. A. Clegg observed the field of industrial relations includes the study of workers and their trade unions, management, employers association and the state institutions concerned with the regulation of employment. According to Dale Yoder, industrial relations deal with the problems which arise in the context of human relationships when the workers submit themselves to being controlled by the employers. He defined industrial relations as problems of human relationship arising from the sale of services for a wage and working on the premises of employers and under their control form the subject matter of industrial relations. The definition given in the Encyclopedia Britannica underscores the fact that industrial relations cover both individual and collective relations. To put it rightly, we can say that the subject of industrial relations therefore includes individual relations and joint consultation between employers and employees at the place of work, collective relations between employers and their organization and the trade unions, and the part played by the state in regulating the relations. Moving on to what exactly the industrial relations scope is. The system of industrial relations functions in the context of an environment consisting of different subsystems. It interacts with the environment and the environment influences the functioning of the system. Industrial relations crosses the boundaries of organization and industries and interfaces with the society. It deals with social relationships in different walks of life and creates collective social relationship, a social capital. It grows and flourishes or stagnates and decays in accordance with economic, social and political conditions prevailing in a society and the policies and legal framework made by the state to regulate it. Objectives of industrial relations. Apart from the primary objective of bringing about sound and healthy relations between employers and employees, industrial relations aims to facilitate production and productivity, to safeguard the rights and interests of both labor and the management by enlisting their cooperation, to achieve a sound, harmonious and mutually beneficial labor management relations. It also aims to avoid unhealthy atmosphere in the industry, especially work stoppages, go slows, gheravs, strikes, lockouts, and according to Nair and Nair, the following are the key attributes of industrial relations: the development of healthier employer-employee relations, the maintenance of industrial peace and high productivity, the development and growth of industrial democracy. Cricaldi 1947 stated that industrial relations in a country are intimately connected with the form of its political government, and the objectives of an industrial organization may vary from purely economic to purely political ends. Cricaldi 1947 again divided the objectives of industrial relations into four categories, which are as following. Very first is improvement of economic conditions of worker in the existing state of industrial management and political government. Second objective is state control on industries for regulating production and promoting harmonious industrial relations. Third category is socialization or rationalization of industries by making state itself a major employer. Fourth category is vesting of the proprietary interest of the workers in the industries in which they are employed. Giving more input on scope of industrial relations, slide 20. Given the overall goals and objectives, it is not surprising that the field of industrial relation is engaged in a number of policy and operations oriented activities. Some of these focus on the relationships between the employer and individual employees, while others deal with the management and other organized labor groups. Still another area to which industrial relations activities contribute significantly is that of overall industrial goals such as your productivity, labor peace and industrial democracy. Employer to individual employee relationships. This theme relates to the focus areas of management in relation to policies and practices that ultimately affect the productivity and well-being of their employees as individuals. With a view to optimize the interest of the employer and those of employees, these comprise fields such as wage and salary administration, career prospects inclusive of planning and promotion, retirement benefits and medical benefits, discipline and redressal of grievances, training and development, counseling, workers' compensation, connected and related issues such as insurance. Labor management relations. Different from employer-employee relationship in this area, which relates to relations between the employer as a management body and its workers as a recognized group or set of groups, labor management relations covers rights, protocols and practices often regulated by a legal structure which is related to management with the concepts like management rights, formation and recognition of unions which represent the interest of the employees. Third is collective agreements. Fourth is the settling of industrial dispute. Now, through these bodies, management and labor negotiate and enforce the establishment of welfare measures and benefit schemes. Another area which is a focus of labor management relationships is healthy and safety regulations and programs at work. Industrial peace and productivity. In this highly competitive area of global business, maintaining high productivity is important for the survival of organizations, which to a great extent depends on the quality of the union management relations at workplaces. A few other areas of focus for maintaining industrial peace and productivity are: very first is upgrading technology and production methods. Second one is securing employee commitment and cooperation in improving productivity. Third is minimizing man days lost per year. And the last one is the restraining and redevelopment of surplus labor. Industrial democracy. Industrial democracy is also known as workers' control, as stated by Solomon in 1998. According to Solomon, this is a socio-political concept to philosophy of industrial organization, which specially focuses on the introduction of democratic procedures to restructure the industrial power and authority relationships within the organization. Salomon further elaborated that the central objective of industrial democracy is the establishment of employee self-management within an organization, whose ownership is vested in either the employees or the state, and whose managerial function is exercised ultimately through a group elected by the employees themselves. Liaison functions. Those who are responsible for the IR function in an organization have to play key and central role in the formulation of industrial relations policy of the organization. Now, this is at a very conceptual and policy level, but there are other activities which take industrial relation personnel out of the organization in the likes of liaison with the outside parties like government, local government, authorities such as labor officers, labor inspectors, commissioners, etc. Participation in judicial and semi-judicial dispute settlement, participation in labor conferences, and so on. Moving on to the forms of industrial relation, the very interaction among the stakeholders in industrial relations is characterized by a certain balance of power. For example, in highly regulated industrial relations environment, the state is likely to be the dominant player. In a market driven economy, employers they tend to dominate as a result of the right to hire and fire in response to the market exigencies. In a socialist economy, trade unions they tend to have a very dominant role. Now, in whole this process, industrial relations degenerate into a dominance submission syndrome in which the dominant stakeholder tends to control. The management of industrial relations within the framework of culture of dominance can take three forms: managing by contending, managing by conceding, managing by colluding, and some of the other important forms which has been mentioned in literature: managing by collaborative problem solving, transformation process model. Managing by contending. It signifies that the stakeholders engage in a contest of will with the dominant stakeholder holding the reins and steering the choice making processes as well as choices. Pressure tactics coupled with employment of leverages like litigations and direct action go hand in hand with the reaction of dominated to protected and threatened interest. Managing by conceding, what exactly it is? Now, it indicates that the dominant stakeholder manages interaction with other less dominant and dominated stakeholders by making concessions to buy peace on an ad hoc basis or situational basis. A major ploy here is to adopt a divide and rule policy. Managing by colluding. It signifies that the dominant stakeholder strikes up equations with individual stakeholder representatives or with coalitions of stakeholders through which mechanism of choice making as well as choices are influenced to favor the dominant stakeholder. The collusion character of the interaction leads to the compromise of the interests of the less dominant stakeholder groups. Managing by collaborative problem solving. Coming out of this vicious cycle is possible only if the interacting stakeholders decide to change the culture of dominance and compliance to a culture of dialogue and mutuality. Now, this is possible only if an individual or a coalition of stakeholders they change the mode of choice making from a contending, conceding, colluding orientation to a mutuality based cooperative orientation. This is possible through a collaborative problem solving approach, evidence of which is already available in various organizations across the globe. Managing by collaborative problem solving in the sphere of industrial relation choice making is perhaps the key to the development of new ethos. Transformational process model. The transformational process model is in essence a dynamic process in which the corporation continuously defines the environment and responds appropriately. It is a continuous process of redefining the organization's own core in relation to its internal stakeholders in order to not only remain in existence but also to change and able to grow and develop. Talking about the factors influencing industrial relation, basically the success of any industrial relation system depends upon the nature of the relationship prevailing among the actors of industrial relation. It also depends equally on the power equation existing between the employers and the trade unions. The power equation of the actors in the industrial relations is determined by a combination of several factors which influence industrial relations. Naming a few, very first is trade union density, frequency of strike activity, political economic institutions, cultural diversity, demographic structure, pattern of behavior, state of technology, nature of supply and demand in the product and labor markets, legal factors and other external environmental developments. Elaborating the factors influencing industrial relation, the very first in line is trade union density. When the unions are phenomenally strong in an industry, the power balance would be in favor of the employees and the unions. In such a situation, the terms of industrial relations would be decided by the unions. The second factor which is influencing industrial relation is frequency of strike activity. Here, when the organizations or industry reports a high number of strikes within a specified period, the industrial relations would come under increasing strain. Depending upon the outcome of the strikes, the power equation would change. Talking about the third factor, political economic situations. The role of political economic situations is critical in achieving the very objective of industrial relations, that is industrial peace and harmony. When the political institutions, especially the ruling, combine overtly favor the employees and the trade unions, the power equation would tilt in favor of the unions. Then is cultural diversity. When there is cultural diversity among the workforce, it may favor the employers to have divisions among the employees along the cultural lines. The educated and the most enlightened employees may make independent decisions which may differ with the general stand of the unions. The presence of heterogeneous groups based on age, gender, income and other relevant bases can also influence the power balance between employers and employees. For instance, the organizations with a high proportion of women employees, they may witness a low intensity in union activity. Next factor in line is pattern of behavior. When the employers espouse authoritarianism in behavior and style of management, the employees may predominantly prefer unions and aggressive postures if possible. In contrast to this, the employees side with the employers when the latter adopts a consultative paternal approach. Moving on to another important topic, that is prerequisites for sound industrial relations, which consist of three major points: equity and fairness, power and authority, individualism and collectivism. Having a more input on equity and fairness, equity refers to equal treatment to one and all under comparable circumstances. Equity and fairness, they are used synonymously in industrial relations. The concept of fairness is utilitarian when one goes by what the majority accepts. The notion of fairness becomes relative when one considers whether or not one is getting a fair share of pay in relation to what others with similar qualifications or experience are receiving. Talking about power and authority. Power has the ability to influence, impose or control. It implies the use of force. Power emanates from six major interrelated aspects: power to reward or punish, power to coerce others, position power, reference power due to personal attributes, expert power due to one's access to information, knowledge or experience, associational power through membership in trade unions, employers organizations, chamber of commerce, networking, coalition, etc. Authority has the right to expect and command obedience. Power and authority, they are often regulated by society. Individualism and collectivism. The fundamental basis of a democratic society is the freedom of the individual. In an employment relationship, collectivist basis may negate or limit an individual's freedom. An individual should have the right to join a trade union. Likewise, he or she should have the right not to join a union. Compelling an employee to join a union due to the union shop clause or closed shop system in a collective agreement negates the right of freedom of the individual employee. Collaborative model for sound industrial relations. Here we will be discussing the basic ingredients of a partnership model for cooperation between labor and management that would involve, among other things, very first is sharing information, consulting with each other on a regular basis, brainstorming together, organizing morale, boosting safaris to units where labor and management have benefited through cooperation, creating opportunities for both management and labor to review, learn and put positive learning into practice, bridging the gap between precept and practice. Lastly, ensuring the support and sustenance of top management. Both management and unions have to fulfill certain obligations of the management, obligations of the unions, and they have to make certain strategic choices also. Talking about the obligations of the management, for management, the following obligations are very critical. Very first is clarify and reason with the other party, provide for say and share for all employees. They should focus on fairness. They should try to empower the people. They should be transparent because trust begets trust. Give credit and learn to manage ego. Second thing is obligations of the union. Unions needs to accept the nexus between the financial success of an enterprise and the livelihood and well-being of the people in that organization. Improvement in wages and welfare can come only from improved business results. Develop a long-term perspective. Understand the very link between the macro and the micro relationships in assessing the behavior and performance of a firm. Unions, they need to realize the importance of knowledge, skills, attitudes and habits. Lifelong employability can come through proactively addressing jointly with the management the issues relating to human obsolescence. Cope with the imperatives of simultaneously pursuing two apparently conflicting goals, that is the pattern maintenance and adaptation to change. Understand and assess the consequences of working together versus working at cross purpose. Lastly, talking about the strategic choices. Labor and management, they have 6 options. Either they coerce, only one side get what it wants, they can conflict while both sides spend more energy while only one side usually has marginal gains. They can compete, one party wins and the other loses. They can compromise, no one gets what they want. They can co-opt, cooperate. It is usually possible for the initiator to talk away with the larger slice of the cake. Or lastly, they can collaborate. Both parties evolve an option that provides for mutual gain. Obviously, collaboration is the most preferred mode. Collaborative collection bargaining can lead to win-win situations and mutual gains for both the worker and the management. Lastly, friends, I hope you have understand the contents well. You can also refer to other quadrants of this module for testing your knowledge and having some more input on the theme of the module. Happy learning!